to today's event on behalf of the CII Family Business Network. I'm Sharanya Menon, and I'm the convener of CII FBN Southern Maharashtra Zone. And I'm so pleased to be with you this evening to have the chance to introduce our guest speaker. Before we get started, I would like to request everyone to kindly switch off your mics during the session. At the end of the session, there will be a question-answer interaction where you can unmute to ask questions. Our guest speaker for today is Professor John A. Davis. Professor Davis is the Faculty Director of the Family Enterprise Programs at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Sloan School of Management. He is also the chairman and founder of the Cambridge Family Enterprise Group. Professor Davis is a globally recognized pioneer and authority on issues related to family enterprise, family wealth, and the family office. Since the 1970s, he has been a leading researcher, author, advisor, and speaker on family enterprise, and is the creator of the field's most impactful conceptual frameworks. Professor Davis teaches MBA and executive courses on family enterprise and family social impact at the MIT Sloan School of Management, where he leads MIT's family enterprise programs. He formerly taught at Harvard Business School for 21 years, where he founded Harvard's Family Business Studies area. He's a trusted advisor to family enterprises from more than 70 countries on their multi-generational strategies, including many of the world's leading families. He is the chairman of the Cambridge Family Enterprise Group, a global advisory, education, and research organization for family enterprises that he founded in 1989. The organization is devoted to helping families and ownership groups navigate the new economy and achieve multi-generational success for their families, enterprises, and financial wealth. Professor Davis's insights help to build shareholder value, develop leaders, strengthen families, professionalize businesses and family offices, and pass sustainable enterprises to the next generation. I've personally had the pleasure of attending Professor Davis's sessions online, and it opened my horizons and approach to thinking about multi-generational enterprises. It is indeed an honor to have you here with us today, Professor. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharanya. That was very, very kind. And it's a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you, FBN CII, for the very kind invitation to join you. Let me see if I can be helpful in this next hour. And I'll start with a confession that it's true that I'm an academic. And as a matter of fact, I'm sitting in front virtually of the MIT Dome, which is my new home. I joined it after teaching at another school down the river in Boston for decades. And I joined it for many reasons, but including the fact that the future is really happening at MIT in the sense that not only are there, I just learned, more than 70 labs and centers and places within the campus where new technologies are being developed, they're emerging, but also where we're studying the impact of all of the changes in the world on society, on business, and for me, my role there in part is to study how the world is changing and also how it's affecting you, affecting your businesses, affecting the societies around our businesses, affecting the families that run and own these companies. And I'm going to share with you some of the important findings that I've had over the past several years of looking into this important topic. But let me balance what I just said, the confession that I am an academic, meaning that I try to understand and I try to organize my thinking in a way where I can communicate it usefully to others. And usefully meaning so that you can do something with it, so that you can take some action, so that you can plan using what you're going to learn today so that you can address certain issues using what you're going to learn today. So the balance to being an academic is that I'm an advisor, and that for, all of these four plus decades that I've been active in the world, I've been working with families around the world. I've worked in India with Indian families that own companies and have typically family offices, not always. I've worked throughout South Asia, again, with some Indian families. I've worked in almost every continent, actually every continent I've been on. I tell people that I don't know Kazakhstan, and it's true. I don't know Kazakhstan, but I do know a lot of other countries. And one of the questions that some of you may have at this point is, are my views, are my ideas about family enterprise American ideas or Western ideas, or are they more broadly based? And I'll tell you that only about a third of my work over these decades has been in North America. Almost all of what I've really learned about you, your companies, your families, your ownership systems, et cetera, is because I've been on airplanes and traveled and gotten to know not only the families, but the countries in which they're living. And what I'll tell you, and some of you might agree with this, and some of you might be resistant to thinking about this, is that most of the issues that families in business face are universal. It matters little where your company is based, where your family is based, the culture that you grew up in terms of the issues, the important problems and challenges and things that you deal with day to day. It matters little. I call it a 15% factor. Now, culture and national laws, like inheritance laws, those matter when you try to implement change. When you try to do something in the system, you have to know how it works, what the constraints are, what the prevailing ideas are because of the way we do things here. Sure, then it matters. But what you'll see from the research and the ideas that I'm going to express now, these are not American, these are not Western ideas, these are ideas based on the experience, the lived experience of families like yours. Okay, now, let me see if I can advance. We may have time to understand or talk about this program that I lead at MIT, but I do recommend that you take some time to explore it. It's a one-week program for teams of family members thinking about how they get their business into the future. And you would discuss in this program some of the things we're going to focus on today, but so much more related to governance and succession and partnering across generations and developing the next generation and being smart in the prevailing new economy that is developing. So I encourage you very much to look at this. And now let me start. This decade started in a very turbulent way with COVID. We might have thought that it would settle down since COVID, but it hasn't. So much is happening, and so much today is predicted to continue to happen through the 2020s and well beyond. In fact, this decade is seen by a number of futurists and business strategists as being probably the most turbulent, meaning volatile, unpredictable, changing, that we've seen maybe in centuries. So hang on and get ready for it is the smart advice. What is our world like today? Highly interconnected, much more diverse and complex. Societies are more diverse today. Organizations are more diverse today. And by diverse, we could mean all kinds of things: ages, genders, people from different places, and even families are becoming more diverse today. In some places in the world, this is more evident than in others, but it's happening. There's faster and more volatile change, not small blips, but larger curves that we face in terms of the markets we face, the technologies that we use, the kinds of organizations that we have. Things are changing quickly. And some of the changes that we're facing today, and we'll talk about some, are actually seismic, where the earth moves very quickly in a short time. COVID was one example of that, but only one. The war in Ukraine has produced some very fast, also significant changes in the world in a very short time. People today have more choices. Everybody's digital. Everybody can shop anywhere and pretty much have it delivered right to you. People today about family members have more choice about where to, what to do. It wasn't that long ago that if you were really good at business, just good option to go into your family business. Today, younger people, some younger people, many younger people are still doing that, but a lot of younger people today are looking for other ways to express their interests and develop a career. There are lots of opportunities in the world today, but there's also, as we're reminded all the time, gaping inequality and some existential threats. Not just an idiot in Moscow who has his finger on the nuclear button, but also environmental, ecological threats. India, among other places like California, where I've spent a good part of my life, is running out of water. What happens when you do run out of water? Well, we know, because we've looked at Syria and we've looked at other places like that, where lots of people move. So there are these kinds of threats popping up and are more evident to us than probably they have been to me than when we worried in the 1980s, 70s, 80s, into the 90s even, about nuclear war. Increased transparency. People, it's hard to hide today. And much more surveillance of people. Societies increasingly fractured. Not only is the pace of life increased, but the time that you're given to address opportunities or to solve important problems, those windows of opportunity to do something are shrinking. You don't have as much time today to make important choices as you did even 10 years ago. And finally, the world is much less predictable. So we're in a world that is shifting rapidly. New things, new opportunities, but new threats. And some of them are big threats, and some of them are big opportunities, to be honest, that we're facing today in a world that is less predictable and gives you much less time to make decisions. Welcome to the new world. And we know that this new world is in fact a new world. It's not a simple extension of the third industrial age. It's a new one. And this new age is driven in part because production technology is changing. And, you know, just in the last week, we've been hearing about chat GBT and, you know, and its ramifications. And what we're learning, and what I'm learning here at MIT, is that we've seen nothing yet. The changes that are coming at us in AI, and by extension, robotics, and by extension, so many things that we're going to be seeing, new technologies, new ways of doing things, new ways of communicating, new ways of working together, new ways of making decisions. We've seen nothing yet. And the big driver going from industrial age 3 to 4 was because we had technologies that could think on their own, make decisions on their own with much less, still some, but much less human intervention. So that monitoring and making and doing things could run without us much more than it could in industrial age 3. That's the big change. But they're all beyond that change in production technology. There are hundreds of new technological areas that are producing new ways of doing things. And technology is a big driver, is a big force that is acting on society, business, and families, including enterprising families. Without a doubt, technology is driving a good part of the change that we're seeing, but it's not the only important factor to pay attention to. Globalization, or now this new period of likely deglobalization, moving more into trade pacts that are oriented around the US and China, according to the experts I'm reading, seems likely. You're reading this too. We'll see where India ends up. By the way, you've been really kind of right in the center of this and managing your neutrality, I think, quite well. Society, political systems, you see it in India, we're seeing it in the US. Economies, they're changing. And the health of societies today, I think, is rather fragile, because so many people in the world today, in their countries and in their areas of the world, feel less well regarded and less well taken care of. And it's producing a lot of pressures inside societies, expressed more and more in stalemated political systems that are not addressing the kinds of needs that societies have. The final big disruptive force that we're seeing work at us today, that we're all recognizing, by the way. I mean, if you know, when people are surveyed anywhere in the world and asked, is the environment, is the physical environment, is the climatic environment that you're in, is the ecological system that you're in, is that an important change, and is that going to impact you? Almost everybody, I mean, upwards of 80% say yes. And most of that 80% believe that it's a serious factor. When you ask people, as they do, and I did this in a survey I'll show you as well, what are the most important changes in the world today that you're addressing so that you can be successful? Environmental change doesn't even get to the list. In the survey that I did, it was number 8 in priority. So we're all seeing it, we're all feeling it, but we're not, as individuals and as organizations and as societies, doing enough, clearly, to address it. Now, we're seeing that society is morphing in a lot of ways. Here's where you could say to me, India is different. But I've been to India. I've worked in India. I know Indian families. I know that most of these important descriptors are at least relatively true in India as they are in the US or the UK or Argentina or Norway or Nigeria. And so, yes, there are some individual differences that you could point out that I would recognize, but not many. And increasingly, the world is starting to look, wherever you go, a lot alike in terms of the issues that we're seeing. In business, we're seeing also some important changes that affect the way we run our business and the way we think about the future and how we need to diversify or innovate or change to stay up. And all of these factors seem relevant. All of them seem relevant, no matter what industry you're in and what markets you're serving. And then finally, the family is changing. Now here too, Indian families are different than families in the US a little. They're not different in terms of what people typically want, how they relate, how I relate to my brother or my sister. They're a little different, but people are people and families are families. And businesses are businesses. And there are some changes that you note, but most of these changes also are showing up in India, as well as in the 50 other countries that, I pay attention to. Now, are we ready for the changes that we're seeing? I did a 2-year study surveying people all over the world, senior and next generation members of families that have family enterprises. This was a thorough quantitative study, but it was also qualitative in the sense that we interviewed a number of people to really hear their voices and to hear how they would express how they're seeing change and reacting to change and doing things to adapt to change. What they notice mostly in how the world is changing around them are these things: volatile economies, digital and other technological disruptions and changes. Industry changing. Industries are changing very quickly. They're maturing much more quickly. They're companies that you didn't expect are getting into some industries. Industries are dying faster and morphing into new related kinds of industries. Diseases, viruses, pandemics, well, this was done during COVID, so we would expect that this would pop up, but be alert, because there's probably another one coming, easily spread because we're so globalized. Political and government issues just about everywhere. And of course, number 8, climate. So these kinds of changes that people are seeing are not particularly, a little bit, but not particularly regional. They're pretty universal. Internally, what's going on inside our system that really is a big change and we're aware of it? Well, we know that we're going to need to move leadership into the next generation. And we're getting close to another massive generational change. It happens all the time, of course, but we're getting close given mean ages that it's accelerating. Generational differences, they're not like us, is most families could say. They're just different. They have different attitudes. They have different interests. They've been prepared differently than us. They're different. The transfer of wealth and control also with leadership. The evolution of our family and our business. Here's something that I've been paying attention to. Businesses grow and develop faster today than they did certainly 20 years ago or 40 years ago. Today, you can spot a lot of businesses, that get big and sometimes very big within a generation. That didn't happen much 2 generations ago or even 1 generation ago. It's happening much more today. So the family's role inside that business is evolving faster and needs to, by the way. And then finally, the opportunities that family members have to do different things in their lives, it's really exploded. So families are changing on the inside. How do people react? Well, about 2/3 say, we expect moderate to high turbulence through this decade. And even more say, given the level of change that they're seeing, we're going to need to adapt moderately to radically to these changes. So that is comforting. But then when you ask families, as I did, how ready are you to do what you need to do to adapt and stay current? Only 29% said that their companies are ready, and only very ready, and only 24% said that their families are very ready. And in my view, if you're not very ready, you're not ready. You've really got to be on your game today to be prepared for change. Why? Because you could be anywhere on this little river in this photo. You could be upriver where the waters are calm, could be. You could be in quickly running rapids, but managing. You could be going through a small disruptive event, one of these little waterfalls, or you could be here. And what I'm trying to do is to get families to step back and look much more than they have in the past at their surrounding environment to say, this is probably what we're going to face, and this is likely what we're going to need to do to adapt to that change. It's not a big exercise, and it's not a different exercise than companies should have been doing all along. But when you're facing this kind of tremendous change around you that can have significant impacts on your business and your family, you need to do this more regularly and in a more rigorous way than you did in the past. more casually, or we'll get to it. And you have to give up your belief that if we can just innovate a little bit more, we can deal with any of these changes. You can deal with some of them through innovation, but not all. Today, there is a lot more happening than that demands the attention of the owners of the company. And for them to think not like operators, not like managers, but to think more like owners do. Industries are consolidating. Country risks are going up in many places around the world. New competitors are entering. Technology is changing. Customer needs are also changing significantly in a number of markets that our clients are deal with. Regulations, always, and those are going to probably become more severe, especially on the environmental side, we think, in the next 4 or 5 years. The next generation is not showing a lot of interest in what we're doing. What do we do about that? And we know now that disruptions don't occur very often, but they're occurring more often. A disruption being a change to you and your business or your life where you can't keep doing things the same way. It doesn't work. And you're going to find you're going to need it to be in the same business or to be in the same place. You're going to have to do some things very differently. That's a disruption. It's not a normal level change. And these kinds of changes are happening. What this calls for, this new situation calls for, is a new mentality or a new mindset. Now, we've always had, and it's the owner mindset, a mindset that says, basically, how do we continue to create value? How do we continue to create financial value, but also relational value, reputational value? It's more than money. But how do we continue to build value? As an owner, I need to be focused there. Now, in addition to being a really good operator, do you need to be a really good operator today? You bet. People are demanding it. Customers may be demanding it more today than ever before because I can go anywhere to shop. But so operations have always mattered. They always will matter. Occasionally, we needed in family companies, maybe once a generation, we had to really think like an owner. Today, you have to think like an owner much more often. That's the big lesson. And what you need to think about is building value. Keep your values. Think about how we want to do things. This is important to us. Great, great. As long as that helps you, those values help you organize and do your business well, beautiful. Keep them, use them. But we need to build value according to these values, and we need to be much more sensitive when is the value of what we're doing going down or going up? It rarely goes sideways, by the way. So when we talk about preserving value, don't do that. Preserving value, it doesn't happen much. It's either going down or it's going up, and you want it to go up in these various ways. And you need to think about that, pay attention to it, talk about it. You create value, not just with your family company, and also with some financial assets that I hope you have, but in other ways too. Philanthropy, being engaged in your community, living a good life, having homes and other things that bring you pleasure and bring you satisfaction in life, great, but also building a great family. And what we know about long-term success, and this has always been the case, a simple focus on running a great business doesn't keep you alive for very long. Maybe a generation, maybe two. If you're not doing these other things, if you're not building value in a number of ways, you're simply not going to make it very long. And so we know that in today's world, when things go away faster, when businesses come and go faster, particular businesses, your company that maybe is doing 2 or 3 things can survive for a long time if you run it well. But particular businesses come and go faster. And even if you're good in a business, your industry may be changing enough that you say it's time for us to stop playing that game and to move our assets over there and play a different game. So you need to switch your mindset if you're interested in surviving a long time as a family in business from this particular business is what we do and what we're going to pass to, it may be, but our big objective is to grow value. And we're more and more agnostic about the kind of business that we're in or businesses that we're in. But we're more focused, consciously focused on building value and getting good as owners, getting good at understanding and being able to say, this is where we're going. This is where we're going to put our capital. These are the kinds of people we need in key roles. This is the kind of culture, innovation, unity, social benefits, This is the kind of culture that we want. And this is how decision-making should be done. As owners, you need to be aware of these things, good at a lot of them, and able to delegate. Like, for example, owners typically delegate to managers the building of a culture, but it's the owner's job to make sure that it's done well. We need to get both generations around the table, thinking together about where this is going, where what our family does is going, and inputting their ideas. The senior generation is in charge, but they have to encourage the next generation to engage, not just in the little issues. We'll take care of the big decisions, thank you very much. You guys just cooperate. That's not where the next generation is at in terms of their aspirations and interests. They want to be in the room where decisions, big decisions, or at least conversations are happening. And so partnering between the two generations we're finding is really important. Keeping your family united is really important in a world where we can do anything. We can go anywhere. Kids are going off and getting educated here and there, and then deciding whether it's still in India or in the UK or wherever, I'd like to live here for a while. Maybe I'd like to work here too. And, who knows? I could raise a family here. So families are tending to geographically spread more. And this is something I don't know if this is so true in India, but it is true in most countries with the families that we're in touch with. So again, another pitch, if you want to spend a week with me and really great thinking faculty to think about your future and to think about where your family and family enterprise are going and how to get there, and to come out of that experience with an action plan, please check out this program. And I've given you some information, you'll get these slides, on other programs that I lead or participate in, either at MIT or within the institute at my company. And with that, I think we're ready for questions.
Okay, thank you, Professor Davis. So we'll open this up for question answers. If there are any questions, you could just unmute yourself and ask. So please go ahead.
Yes, Pratima. Yes, sir. I'm Mudit Jain, third generation, much maligned in a family business. I just want to say what happens in the reality. What you say, no one can dispute. One is it's all about control. And when it's a joint business, people jockey amongst themselves to get their progeny in more comfortable positions. We all know that's bad for business, but the business survives because the barriers to entry are so humongous, especially in India, that the businesses survive and many fall by the wayside, but many do. My business is 74 years strong, but it has its ills. So just want to tell you that EQ has become more important. While we are very rational in making decisions about projects, in human beings, it's another cup of tea. Thank you, sir. These are just comments.
Oh, that was beautiful. That was great. Yeah, exactly right. I think that EQ, not every business leader, family business leader, not everybody in the family has EQ, or much of it, it seems, but it's always been an important factor, hasn't it? Understanding how you balance individual interests, political interests, keep the family together while maintaining professional standards. Yeah, it's bravo. Great thought. Yep.
Anyone else? Please unmute yourself and talk. Yes.
I'll just add one more thing then, if no one is saying. In business school, I went to Wharton. We excellent analytical education, but EQ was missing. Maybe it's changed now. I went in 86, 87. And the other thing is dealing with government. That was totally not taught. And that here is a very, very big aspect. And I'm sure it's in many countries too. Just adding, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Business schools teach business operations mostly. They don't teach anything about how to be a good owner. And we know that that's really important. Most people that go to fine schools like Wharton or Harvard or MIT or Stanford or the Judge School at Cambridge or all of the good schools now that you've got in India, that have really become world-class in the last 30 years. They teach management, they teach operations, and they should be teaching. Most people that go to these schools go into private companies, and not big public companies. And most people that go to these schools, many of them could really learn about the importance of being a good owner, or even what governance means. And we should be doing that, and we're doing it more. But there's now a proliferation of family business courses. I teach one here, taught one at HBS. There are proliferation of these courses in business schools all over the world, and that's where how to be a good owner. What does ownership even do in a company? What's good governance? What are good boards? What is good family governance? How do you develop agreements among owners? Things like that, important stuff. Those are finally being taught in the family business space. Yeah, thank you for that.
Any more questions? Please unmute yourself. Yes, Maya.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, do go ahead.
Good morning and good evening to all present here, and good morning, the Professor. With your 40 years of odd experience that you just shared with us, what is that one value that you have noticed among family business which has made them successful intergenerational and around the world? What is that one or two of I mean, just to point out pertinently, what is that one thread which binds the family business together, according to you?
Yeah, if you asked me about one thing that families that survive and succeed over generations do, it's that they remain decisive about the big issues. No, it's more complex than that. There's never usually one thing that explains everything. But when you ask me that question, the one behavior.
I mean, I'm talking about a universal truth. I mean, there is something
Yeah.
like a universal truth cutting across
Yeah.
time, generations, and things. So,
Right.
what is that one thing that
I just said it.
makes the great, per se, if I can ask you, in
Yeah,
your experience?
and thank you. And I just said it. It's being decisive. It's being able as a group with all of the competing interests and political interests and forces, and it's staying decisive, figuring out what's next, making those decisions, moving ahead. That, if you're asking for one, I would say that.
And if you can indulge me slightly, you
Sure.
talked about good stewardship and you said the switch of mindset is required. So for the next generation, which has a very fickle mind, I mean, the third generation or the fourth generation, which is literally living off the social media and getting influenced by not real-time books, but just some quote somewhere. How do you change the mindset for such a generation? I mean, which is consuming so much knowledge, which is not knowledge at all.
Yeah. And again, as you can appreciate, this is universal. But I think what we're seeing now is that when the senior generation says to the junior generation, the next generation, let's sit together and let's talk about where this is going, or where this could go, or where you would want it to go. It's having that dialogue. It's having that conversation, and it's not just one meeting. Let's do this once and okay, we did it. No, but it's periodically, a couple times a year, sitting together for the better part of a day and saying, what's going on? What do we want? Where should we take this as a family? Those kinds of conversations engage the next generation to be more thoughtful and collaborative with their parents. And it's a process, again, it's not just one and done, but you need to institute that. And in generations past, we had some of those conversations in generations past, but not too many, because on both sides, there was an appreciation that the senior generation knew more. And our job was to learn more. And today, the younger people don't always see us as knowing the right things. And they know other things. Now, the truth is that they do know some other things, and that they tend to be good at some other things that my generation, at least, is not as good as, although I'm keeping up. So,
actually, the reason I asked that was because what
Please.
happens is that most of the top management is senior to me, and the upcoming talent has this technological advancement, and they are all gung-ho and bullish about the future with talking about crypto, doing meetings and stuff. That can be intimidating to the senior management. Now, to maintain the balance between them becomes a challenge for a person who's running the company. I mean, how do you go about that? I mean,
yeah, and you're so right about this. And I was in Brazil not too long ago. It was actually just before COVID, and meeting with a group of very good, well-educated, aspiring young people. in their 20s and early 30s. And they were expressing their frustration that there were about 40 of them. They were expressing their frustration that they couldn't get the senior generation to pay attention to these things that they thought were pivotal, that were, you know, terribly important for the future of their companies. But when I asked them, what does the senior generation know and what are they good at that is different and better than you? They couldn't come up with many answers. And I said to them, you've got to. Why would anybody want to partner with you if the impression is that you don't think they know very much? Why would they want to sit with you? So the first step into building bridges across generations is to appreciate one another. That's the first step. And to recognize that the other person knows things that I don't know. And it might help us to listen to one another. That's the first step.
Thank you so much, Professor. Appreciate your time and that lecture. Thank you so much.
Excellent questions. Thank you very much.
So we go
Sir,
on
I
to
have a question. I have a
Yes.
question, sir. Entitlement of younger generation, successor generation is something which, even if we know that it's not correct, but then it still prevails. And in India, Indian businesses, it does prevail. I have seen as a family business advisor that many a times it's the senior generation who makes their children take it for granted that this is going to be your business. So the whole concept of entitlement comes from the senior generation. And then when youngsters, when they join the business and they don't fulfill the expectations of seniors, then the whole issue comes at, no, you are not entitled to, you're supposed to learn, you're supposed to do so and so things. So this whole concept of it's our family's business and I'm going to be working in the business, that comes from parents, largely from the parents, or it starts from the parents. What do you see? Is this the scenario in other countries, in other places also? Or it's very typical to Indian families?
No. I mean, you've stated it beautifully. And again, it's a universal factor. I would have to say that there's not a single country, not a single area where what you're saying here isn't a truism. That here's my theory. Somewhere around the 1970s, I think, it could have been a little earlier, parents, and maybe this started more in Western families, maybe, but it didn't take long before this mentality kind of spread, that parents started to think that what they owed their kids was to help them become their best version. You know, if you want to be an architect, or if you want to be a violinist, or if you, whatever, my job is to help you get there. And what matters is you becoming who you want to be. Now, that's one thing that's important, that matters. But what parents stopped saying, in my view, is, but don't forget your responsibility to your family. Your family got you here. Your family has given you and will give you a lot. But you have a responsibility to your family to contribute, to get good at whatever you're doing. And hopefully some of you will get good at what the family does and contribute to it. That's one message that I see running through a lot of families. And parents, when I say that, normally say, yeah, I think we did that. The second thing is they needed to say, and they should always say, we're going to run our business in a professional, high quality way. And the people, family and non-family, that join our business, they only can join our business if they're good and professional. And your obligation, if you want to be in the business, your obligation is to get good. Because if you don't meet our qualifications, you should look elsewhere. That's the way it's going to work. Now, for some reason, I think a lot of parents find that to be a difficult message for their children. I think it's not only responsible, but it's a pretty easy thing to say to people. If you want to participate at something, if you want to be a good soccer player, or if you want to, be a good swimmer, I was a swimmer growing up, you've got to be good at it. I mean, otherwise you're never going to get to the championships. You're never going to, I don't know, maybe we could talk more about this, but for some reason, some parents have a hard time just saying that. Would you agree?
Yes, I do agree, sir, and I'm sure a lot of people here would agree that it's difficult for parents to say this. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I scratch my head at is why? Why do we feel inhibited from saying that? And then, as a senior generation, making sure that we've got some rules in place and a process so that we can fairly evaluate the next generation and decide who qualifies to be in management or in the business. And we should do that, who qualifies to be on the board. We should do that too. Qualifications, your ability to do something well, matters, and matters for not just survival. It matters for pride and self-respect. We should be encouraging better performance, higher standards, contribution, real contribution. And that, I think that takes a lot of energy and attention by parents. And maybe that's a reason why it's not happening as much as I would like to see.
Okay, so we have one more question from Raja. So Raja, please, you can unmute yourself.
Professor, very good evening. I'm so glad hearing you. I've taken complete notes of your points. I was so impressed when you said build value according to your values. That was the core of any family business to sustain. Thank you, Professor. I have two questions, Professor. Number one, I am so impressed that you have traveled across the globe and you have also seen many family offices, including India. Considering India's context and the family offices, do you recommend any global companies which is having family offices whom you may recommend us to benchmark?
Well, if you're asking who are there resources to help families think about the design, the organization, management of their family offices? Yes. And we do that at my group, Cambridge Family Enterprise Group. There are others as well who do that. I don't know of a particular advisory group in India, I'm sorry to say, and I try to keep my market intelligence pretty high, but I don't at this point. I'm sure that there are, because family offices are growing in number rapidly. And what we're seeing, by the way, is that most families, make a mistake at thinking that they alone in their private family office can do a good job managing the liquid assets of the family. That to do that well is pretty expensive, first of all. And it requires still staying up with market trends and with having a good network around you so that you have good deal flow and opportunities. And that's very hard to achieve in a private family investment office. It's easier to achieve in a multifamily office or in some other distributed way. And if you're interested in talking what we've learned about that, I'm happy to talk with you about that. It's we're now in our work. For example, if you're under $1 billion US in liquid assets, we almost automatically recommend that we help find a multifamily office or another way of managing those assets. Other things can be done, legal services and tax compliance and blah, 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 and family organization. That can be done usefully in your own private family office, but the financial stuff, got to be very careful about that. So, shoot me an email is what I would say, and I'll try to get you some.
Certainly, Professor. Any companies you find very good for Indian family houses to benchmark?
You mean Indian family offices?
Yeah, who they can see up to and benchmark.
Oh, that's
sustained.
Yeah, thank you. I can't answer that question. There is a really good publication that I read that you might want to read. It's called, it's out of the UK, but they're looking at family offices internationally, and it's called Family Capital. And so I would check it out. It's because they, in that publication, it's an online publication, they do give examples of noteworthy family offices, what they're doing, and family office practices. It's I found it to be useful. But shoot me an email if you'd like.
Professor.
Yeah.
The last request from my side is, typically what I have found is, I mean, it's well said that with the example of the bridge, that across generation in a family house, people should collaborate. But how to improve a collective risk appetite in a family house? Any experience of yours or any methodologies which you have introduced because of which collectively the risk appetite of the family house has increased for taking up or getting into a breakthrough?
Oh, so how do you if I can just reword it, how do you consolidate the various points of view of the family to make decisions, or can you repeat?
How to increase the risk appetite in the family house, let's presume.
Oh, I see. Yeah, sure. I think I know exactly what you're getting at, because there are a couple of families that I'm advising right now that have started kind of plateauing, and their appetite for risk and challenge has really, they see it, it's starting to do this, right? And you're simply not going to get the returns you need unless you're experimenting and trying some new things. Helping families, and this is kind of a new area for us, but we've been doing it now for a while, so we're excited about it. Helping families with direct investing so that they can learn about some new ideas and learn about new industries maybe that are emerging, and get into some new activities early stage. But doing that in a sensible way. So you're not making huge bets in the beginning, but making thoughtful bets and really using those bets to learn. We could talk more about that. And there's even a resource here at MIT that is helpful in that regard that I could tell you about.
Thank you, Professor. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Great question.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask? There was some, Vivek Joshi. Does he want to ask a question? Mr. Vivek Joshi? Is there anyone else who'd like to ask? Please unmute yourself and you can just go ahead and ask. Okay, so I think we've finished with the questions, Professor.
Okay.
Well,
Well-
Vivek says his mic is not working. Prakash, can you unmute Mr. Vivek Joshi's mic?
Yeah, I've unmuted him actually. Can speak.
Yeah. Vivek, can you try again? No, I think there's a, okay, I can see him here, but so Vivek, can you still not unmute your mic? Oh, it's not working. All right, so maybe we can just skip that and unless he types it out. And Sharanya, can you read out his question? Because my screen turns around the minute I start reading the chat. Vivek, if you can type it out, Sharanya will read it out.
In the meantime, Professor, if you could just, share your thoughts on the Kohler family. I mean, the Kohler family business per se, if you can, because Mr. Raja was asking about it. So do you have any experience? Because they have a global presence and it's still a very much family held business.
Right. I don't have enough experience with them. I've met a couple of the family members. I've read a couple of things about the Kohler family, but I don't know their experience and their how they've organized to do it, except to say that the family members that I've met have very high professional standards. And they've spent a lot of time thinking not only how you grow a global business like they have very well, obviously, but also how you keep your family organized and disciplined in that process. That, we all know this, right? Everybody in this meeting knows this, that you don't, and it was one of the first things I learned in the family business field that initially I was kind of surprised about, but families that had been in business for a while that I was studying or in the classroom with, and I would ask families, they were in generation 3, 5, 7, whatever. How did you do it? I mean, that's a long time to stay in business together. How did you do it? And of course, the answers are, it involves doing a lot of things well. And, everybody's going to make mistakes and then recovering from those mistakes and learning. But one of the things that they would continually tell me is you've got to get your family organized. And initially I would say, well, you mean the owners? And they would say, well, yeah, of course, the owners have to be organized. They have to be aligned. And no, but we're talking about the family, getting the family organized and agreeing to certain ways of treating the business, like, standards for qualifications for entry, things like that, and staying in touch with one another and talking as a family about what we want and our commitment to the business. We have to do that. And if you don't do that, the other stuff, you might have a good business, but at some point, it's not going to be a family business. So I think the Kohlers have done that. That's been my impression talking with a couple of them, but besides that, I can't tell you much.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Is there any other question? So we could
I-
just.
Could I
Yeah,
ask
sure.
a question?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's really been nice and very refreshing to hear the speech. Thank you so much, Dr. Sir Don. I have a small question to ask you. When you say family, I do remember you mentioning that it covers everybody, the people, as well as the organization, the team. And yes, I probably am asking a question a little beyond the family per se. Does this also include the team, the board, to understand where do you want to move with it, like the family values, the mission, where do you want to go? Certain questions are very poignant, and are they also applicable to the board and to the organizational structure, which makes
Yeah.
the family?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When the way developing a good board, it starts with, the foundations. Start with a family that wants to do something together and can contribute in various ways to that. Contribute good owners, good board members, maybe some good employees and business leaders. Usually that's the case. And then we're interested in doing other things that help build value in other ways, like philanthropy and being good citizens in our community and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
So we've got a family and a good ownership group, but then we know that this making decisions, good decisions, running something effectively requires not only good management and a good organization. And for that, we can't do it alone. We're going to need good non-family talent, but also having a good board, a good guidance system for all of this that can understand what the owners want and communicate to management and set the direction and then monitor things well. That's what a good board does.
Sure.
So yeah, it's an important part of the whole puzzle. Now, let me say this, because I've just hit a time here where I'm going to need to transition to another meeting here at this fine institution. And but it's been a great pleasure to talk with all of you. Your questions, your thoughts are fun. They're interesting. They're important. And so thank you for that. And I hope we can meet again.
Yeah. Well,
And I
thank you,
hope I see
Professor.
you at MIT sometime.
Well, thank you, Professor. And I hope everyone has enjoyed it as much as I have. And it has been a very insightful talk with very many ideas that we can all reflect upon. And well, I come from a 133-year-old family business myself.
Yeah.
So I think I can just relate to so many things that you have spoken, and many which have actually been left behind, but I'm quite sure we'd have many more interactions with you. I look forward to that. I would request everybody to put on your videos for a moment so that we can take a screenshot. So Prakash, do tell us when you have taken a screenshot with all of us in. And thank you very much and have a good evening. And Professor, we really look forward to having some more sessions with you.
Thank you, Pratima. Thank you so much for the kind invitation. Great to be with you all.
So Prakash, let us know when you're done.
Oh, just a minute. Yeah, ma'am, it's done.
Okay, thank you so much and have a good evening. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.